Glory America, bonjour, hi, candidate Hugh Hewitt. It is time for the Heritage Hour. HughForHeritage.com for all things heritage. I always begin my third hour on Tuesday with Rob Bluey, the Vice President for Comms over at the Heritage Foundation, also Executive Editor of the Daily Signal. I believe he was in Lafayette Park last night trying to tear down Andrew Jackson. Is that right, Rob Bluey?
Wow, that was amazing to watch, Hugh, and I'm so glad that the police rushed in and did what they could to put an end to it. I can't believe right outside of the White House we were seeing that take place. No, I was not there, but certainly it was something that I think all Americans need to pay attention to.
I saw the video of the guy yelling at the African-American cop, and I could have sworn that was you, Rob. Are you sure you weren't there?
No, I wasn't, Hugh, but we've got plenty of coverage of it at the Daily Signal today. My colleagues Jared Stetman and Fred Lucas have looked into what exactly we can do about this. I think that the American people are frustrated. They're not seeing more arrests for the people who are vandalizing this property, these statues. I know that your last guest, Tom Cotton, talked about some laws that the federal officials could put into place, and I think it's time that we start to do that. The American people are getting fed up with the lack of action.
Let's go from lighthearted to serious, and we'll put aside the fact I do think they had terrible towels with them and that they were Steelers fans. But let's go to the serious. Black Lives Matter is two things. It is a movement that I believe is incorporated and has 501c3 status. That is an organization with a manifesto, and then it is a slogan. I don't want to talk about the slogan because the slogan means a lot of different things to different people, some of which I can agree with. But the organization has a manifesto, and the Heritage Foundation has studied the manifesto. What does the organization believe, Rob Bluey?
Well, it is an organization with Marxist-type beliefs, radical beliefs that would fundamentally transform our country from the founding principles that we believe in to a radically different place. And I think that it's unfortunate that some of these companies have just so quickly decided to make these large donations, millions of dollars in some cases, without fully vetting and understanding what the mission and aims of the national organization is. Now, granted, Hugh, I understand that there are splinter groups. I mean, we saw this with the women's movement. Remember the Women's March? I mean, you had all sorts of different entities that were involved with that. And eventually, through some reporting that we did at the Daily Signal, and what their aims were.
And so eventually the Women's March collapsed, I believe, because of the attachment to it of very marginally hard left groups. Black Lives Matter, though, as an organization, again, not the slogan or not the standard, but the organization, you say it is Marxist. How do you get to that conclusion, Rob Bluey?
I go to any of the people who are leading the organization and look at their social media posts, look at the things that they are calling to happen. It is disgraceful, I think, for their attacks on law enforcement and police. You saw yesterday Sean King, one of the most prominent members, say that we needed to remove all white images of Jesus from our churches. So now they're going after our religious institutions and those who believe in faith. And if you overthrow of our government.
Your Skype cuts in and out, Rob. I think it's because you get excited and move. Sean King is what position in Black Lives Matter?
Hugh, I don't know his particular title, but he is one of the most prominent and followed people with the organization. He's somebody who is certainly driving those followers in a certain direction. That's for sure.
So he went all Lutheran on us, and he wants all images out of the churches?
This was unbelievable. Lots of reporting in the last 24 hours on this, Hugh. Shatter the stained glass windows, remove all depictions of white Jesus, and frankly, what you saw happen in Lafayette Square last night was not just the attempted toppling of the Andrew Jackson statue, but they also defaced the Episcopal Church right there, which has already been burned. So I mean the fact that they're going after our religious institutions, which really, frankly, is just alarming, I think is another wake-up call that the American people are frustrated and want to see some action.
Now, Rob Bluey, the president, made an argument on Saturday night. I have a Washington Post column this morning on the Tulsa rally, and the left got into its blue bubble on Sunday, and they dunked on the president for only having 6,000 people, and they ignored both the online audience, but more importantly, they ignored his theme, which is that there is a silent majority. Now, one of the reasons I would believe that such a silent majority exists is if traffic to the Daily Signal and other of the heritage outlets and platforms is increasing. Have you, in fact, seen that?
Hugh, we have actually. There are so many great resources, both at the Daily Signal with our reporting and heritage. I think one of the things that we've seen a tremendous increase in is this concern about the growth of socialism in this country, particularly with younger Americans, which is why this week we're partnering with you to have an ebook, the 9 ways that socialism could bankrupt America. We have a great online guide to the Constitution. You talk about education and wanting to educate America's youth. That is a primary role that the Heritage Foundation plays to make sure that the next generation, if they're not being taught in schools, they're getting it from institutions like Hillsdale College and the Heritage Foundation.
I wanted to read to you. I had on former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates earlier, and I got a direct message that read this, Rob Bluey. Listening to the Secretary Gates interview on the way to work this morning, I'll listen to the rest later. You and Gates are talking about tech industry leadership being ill-informed. The problem is bigger. It's a values and culture problem. The leaders of the under 40 and maybe the under 50 generation do not in sufficient numbers view the U.S. as a unique force for good. So the idea that the U.S. is somehow worth preserving vis-a-vis a system like the Chinese Communist Party does not factor into their thinking. That's a fairly calamitous conclusion. Do you agree with it, Rob Bluey?
Well, it certainly is, Hugh. I think that we are seeing a generational shift here, and I think it has to do with the education system in this country and the fact that you have so many colleges that employ left-wing professors who are teaching young people to dislike and want to change the fundamental values and the foundational values of our country. And so that is problematic from that standpoint. Recent polling seems to indicate that this is very much true, that people they're less inclined to be proud of their country. And you even see this when there's a comparison between socialism and capitalism, and the fact that socialism sometimes has higher polling numbers, particularly among young people in the younger generation. So, Hugh, I think we need to fight back against this. We can't stand still. Now it's a battle for the future of America, and we need to be those conservatives who are standing at the guard to protect it. Need to step up and have our reinforcements and make sure that we do everything that we can to ensure that our next generation, our kids, are going to be in a position where they can carry forward the great traditions that we've had of the past.
Robert Bluey is the Director of Communications at the Heritage Foundation. If you go to hughforheritage.com, you can get the ebook on socialism and how to combat it. Rob Bluey, though, I want to talk a little bit about this generation that is coming up. I don't know how you reclaim except via politics. And so you have to win elections. And if Vice President Biden wins this election, I would expect his appointees to be significantly to the left of those that were in the Obama administration, which were significantly to the left of those that were in the Clinton administration. Do you agree with my assessment?
I think that's absolutely true. If you just look at the very nature of what's going on in our country right now, there are progressives who are moving aggressively. I think today's a primary day, for instance, in many states, and there are many progressive, very hard left candidates who are running for office, and those policies will certainly be one to influence the next administration. And I think that were it to be, a Democrat in the White House, you'd have a situation where there would be enormous pressure to move in that direction, Hugh. And there's already that pressure happening on Capitol Hill. Look at the influence of people like AOC and the Squad on the Democratic leadership there.
Now, Rob, but when I was your age, SDS was a memory for me. I wasn't old enough to be surrounded by it. I went to college after SDS had collapsed. But it never had the impact that the attention it garnered would have suggested. Do you think we're paying too much attention to these demonstrations, or are they overrepresented in terms of who they actually represent?
Well, the demonstrations, I think, are getting the attention because we tend to know that that's makes for good television, right? This conflict.
Yes.
So now it's not happening in every community across the country, but certainly in some of our major cities, Hugh, it is happening. Not too far from my home, right outside of Washington D.C. So I think that it is alarming that there are people within our own communities that are taking these types of actions.